Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. We're here with the Zeni co-founders, Swapnil and Snehal Shinde. How are you guys?
We are doing great.
Did okay
Thanks.
with the names?
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for joining. It came together quickly because you guys are opening an office and operations here in Utah for Zeni, and you're here first visit, right?
Yep. That's correct.
Very cool. Let's start with the founding story of Zeni, and you guys can answer whoever wants.
Sure. Maybe I'll go first, then you can add to it. So we started Zeni because as entrepreneurs, this is our third startup. So for the first two startups, we have had this problem where our financials were always done manually by either a part-time bookkeeper or an accountant or an outsourced finance firm. And we saw time and again that every time we worked in that model, no one even started working on our books till the month ended. And after the month ended, they took like 2 weeks to close the books. So that meant during the month, we were pretty much flying blind. And after the month ends, after the books were closed, all that they could give us was Excels. So Excel sheets are flying back and forth. There are no real insights given to us. So that really, I think, impacts the way you do your business, especially for startups where cash is king. You really need to be on top of your finances. So that was a pain point which we saw again and again and lived over 10 years. So we thought it was time for us to fix it, and that's why Zeni was born.
Very cool. Yeah, you don't want to be a startup and asking, do we have enough money
Yep.
for payroll or office expenses or whatever it is? Okay. And so third time, and the previous two were successful, right?
Yeah, the last one was acquired by American Express. So it was a great exit in a pretty short amount of time.
Very cool. And there's a lot of pain points as entrepreneurs, but this is the one you guys identified as the most painful and the one that you guys could solve with your expertise and experience. So AI seems to be a recurring theme with what you guys do. How did you go about, like, you solved the problem, it was you want to solve the problem, it was painful, and you insinuated that a lot of other startups would have the same problem. So what was the decision-making process, and how did you guys lay out like the framework of how to build it?
Yeah, so our goal was not just to focus on AI, but AI plus human collaboration. And that is what we did in our last company, Mezi, which was around travel domain. And this is around finance domain. But the goal was we did it pretty successfully with Mezi in travel domain with the human plus AI collaboration. We thought we can take the same blueprint and use it in the finance vertical, where over the last century or so, you have everyone doing the same thing over and over again. And AI wasn't matured enough where you can actually come into this vertical and then try to democratize it using AI, right? So that was kind of our thesis, to see if we can take a new vertical, which has a far bigger market globally, and then try to tackle it the right way.
Yeah.
And eliminating a finance person from this loop is almost impossible. So the only way we can fasten this whole process is basically convert them into a superhuman where they feel that they can do the same things but 10x faster.
Yeah. And so a lot of the stuff is automated and on cruise control, but you obviously have human supervision, and people inevitably want to hear like a human voice and
Correct.
get confirmation that things are working out well. Did you guys, with your background, did you have to learn a lot about finance, or through your startup experience, did you already know like what the pain points were with bookkeeping and accounting? Did you run into any problems where like, well, that won't work in the real world type of thing?
Yeah, finance is one of those key problems where as a founder, you want it to be done the right way, but at the same time, you don't want to do it because it's always a pain point and you want to focus on running your business, right? So that's our exposure to finance. We can create P&Ls, we can understand the numbers, but how do you crunch them to come up with the month-end financials that we had no access to? And our goal has always been, you have to foolish enough to think that you can solve that problem and then go ahead and solve it. So I think we have an advantage where we don't have a decade year of baggage that we are carrying, because we know so much about finance that we won't think about this problem in a very different way, right? So I think that is our advantage. We are not carrying that baggage, and that's why we can think in a foolish way and actually make it happen.
Gotcha. All right. So from the idea phase to first customer, give a glimpse of what that's like to build out and get your first customer?
I think we got our first customer even before we built our website. And one advantage that we had is like we are highly networked in the Bay Area, and we have invested in 30 plus startups. So we just reached out to some of the startups that we had invested in, and we discussed the problem with them. It was a major pain point for them. So we discussed about the vision that we had for Zeni and asked them if they want to be the early partners and just beta test Zeni for the next 3 months. And that's how it started.
Very cool. And this is applicable for startups that are SaaS or consumer goods, any type of startup that needs to
Yeah,
have a good picture of their finances, right?
absolutely.
And how does that differ with like industries that you guys weren't familiar with? Because I know like at the end of the day, balance sheet and P&L kind of look the same, but like for if you're making product and you've got supply chain versus like a technology company, how did you guys mold it that a product fits and works for every type of startup?
And that's why we actually picked technology as a vertical. We are only focusing on tech startups today.
Okay.
But within tech, it can be consumer, it can be SaaS, it can be enterprise, or even crypto or cannabis startups. So, but just focus on tech startup. So that way we can build AI that can go deeper. And then once we solve it for this vertical, we can maybe go look for restaurants and dentistries and so on. So kind of expand that way.
Gotcha. And so first customer before the website's built, that's a good problem to have. And then as you guys are onboarding new customers, how do you guys view and see the product that it's working and it's doing what you guys want it to and that the entrepreneurs are getting benefit from it?
I think there are two phases. One is when we present the product to a potential customer. A lot of them actually come from a world where they are using outsourced finance firms or part time bookkeepers. And the moment they look at Zeni, they are like, wow, this is like for the first time they actually see a potential of their accounting and bookkeeping being done on a daily basis. So that's one big differentiator with Zeni, where we work on your books every single day, not just at the end of the month. And then our ability to give you real time insights via the Zeni dashboard is also pretty unique. So they go hand in hand. And plus, we give you a finance team that is extremely good at managing finances for startups. So every accountant, bookkeeper that we have is trained to work on startup finances. So when you combine all the three, we create a very differentiated solution that is 10x faster. And then once they onboard, they go through a dashboard onboarding, which I think Snehal can give more information. But that's the aha moment where they see their own data on the Zeni dashboard being reflected and changed and updated every single day. So I think that really gives them the trust that Zeni has their back, and that can be game changing.
Yeah. So at the end of the week, an entrepreneur's had, a rough week and all sorts of problems, and they've got bookkeeping in it before Zeni, right? Like, oh, it'll be a late Friday night. But now they could go home theoretically, right? Because they've saved time and don't have to worry about it.
And the beauty is that they can now make proactive decisions by looking at the finances that Zeni is presenting on a daily basis rather than being reactive after the month has closed.
Yeah.
And a lot of founders, they try to either ignore finances because they're focused on their product, or they work on the finances themselves over the weekend and mess them up. But having clean financials is so important and paramount if you're raising VC funding, because the moment you present those clean financials to those potential investors, you can build that trust that, okay, this company is run in a very tight way, and we can really trust these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Legal and finance, those are the things that often get forgotten. And then when you need them, it's just a mess.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys are twin brothers. And how do you guys, with this company and previous ones as well, divide up duties and decide who's going to own what in the company?
I like to work on the fun part, and then the rest he takes care of.
So we discussed like which is the harder part, and the moment we figured that out, I was like, Snehal can work on that. I can work on the fun part.
Okay, so it's
But
like,
he basically, Snehal takes over all the product and technology, and I look at marketing, sales, and our finance operation.
all right, and you both find that to be the fun part?
Yeah.
Yeah, we.
I mean, we both agree product is the fun part, but someone has to take care of the rest.
Okay. So even though you are twin brothers, you have the same problems as any startup founding team.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that everyone knows that's the worst part, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. And we don't have one problem, by the way. Like a lot of times, if some founder comes up with an idea, the next big task is for them to find a co-founder. So we don't have to go through that. That is a pretty painful process.
Yeah. And then when you guys don't agree on something, who's the older one?
Me.
By 5 minutes.
5
It
minutes?
feels like 5 years, but 5 minutes.
Though I might look younger.
And so ultimately, as the senior member of the team in age, do you have like this is the way we're going to do it veto, or how do you guys come to a consensus when you might not agree on a strategy?
So I think over the last 3 startups, we have grown a lot as founders, and I think now we have reached a stage where we are very good at delegating. So rather than us making the decisions, we have great leaders in the company who are given that opportunity to actually make those decisions. So even at times, if we don't agree, we just let that person know that this is what our views are. But then at the end of the day, it's your decision. And if you fall down, then get up and start running faster, right?
Gotcha. So it's not you don't call your mom and say,
No.
pick this one, pick me. Very cool.
But as founders, I think you always have a gut feel, right? We do a lot based on our gut feel, because even today, what we built with Zeni, we could not look at 2 other companies and say, oh, they are doing it, let's do it better. It was all based on your gut feel that, hey, this might make sense, and it clicked.
Yeah. But ultimately, like the upside with working with a twin brother is great for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are always on the same page.
Yeah. It might be like an inherent telepathic
Yeah.
advantage there. Very cool. So what are some things that you learned, both positive and negative, from your previous startups that you either don't want to replicate with Zeni or that you know work well and you're going to apply?
Yeah, I would say, if you compare us to our version when we were working on our first startup, we pretty much wore all the hats that we could and build the company bottoms up. So that meant that we played a lot of different leadership roles, which actually burns you out and also slows you down in some cases. So what we have learned over the years is that if you build your team top down and bottoms up at the same time, you can actually grow faster. You can have smarter people doing things in that particular vertical than you can, and probably that's the most efficient way to build a team that can execute things faster.
Yeah, very cool. Any other insights, even negative ones of like, we screwed this up and we're not
I
going to
think,
do that again?
yeah, I would say whether you're hiring or raising money from investors, you should always remember that the best deal will never come at the best price. And you should be okay with that. And you should go to an extent where you actually leave some value on the table, so that the other party should feel excited and they should feel that they have won this, right? So something like that you should always keep in mind. Never try to squeeze the other person. You should always try to put yourself in the shoes of the other person. So whether it is partnership, VC funding, hiring employees and stuff like that.
Yeah, great advice. So with your other startups that got acquired, you also went to work for the acquiring companies, right? So you went from startup, nimble, fast, to a pretty big bureaucracy, what was that like for you guys?
I think we had two very different experiences. Our first startup was acquired by RDO, which was started by the Skype co-founders, and it was like a probably a 10x bigger startup than we were, very well funded, and we got to work very closely with the CEO, the president, and we launched RDO in 35 countries around the world after we joined RDO. So that whole experience was very unique, very global, and amazing team. But it was still not like a huge, big corporate kind of an experience. We enjoyed probably the same kind of startup experience, but at a different scale. And in our next startup, it was acquired by American Express, and that experience again was very different because speed there wasn't the number one priority, but doing it right was the number one priority. So we worked or invested a lot of time in securing our platform, making it bulletproof. And because MX is a fintech company, everything there, like you cannot go wrong when you release a product. So I think that accuracy mattered a lot.
Yeah.
And I think also MX was a mind blowing experience because they made sure we stayed as a startup within this big organization. So we were part of digital labs, and the leaders there made sure that we we are taken care of the right way, the startup culture is actually not getting screwed. In fact, this culture can actually grow within MX, and the other teams can actually learn from this culture. So I think it also depends upon the acquirer, how they can use the startup to its advantage, not just from a tech perspective, but even from a culture vibes perspective.
Yeah. So overall, both were good experiences, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Because there's been others where they've gotten acquired, and it's maybe I'm simplifying, but there's one day that they're the boss, and there's no cafeteria and no HR on, and the next day they pull into a gigantic parking lot and they don't have a badge, and
Yeah.
like, well, this is a completely different speed. But it sounds like you guys had a good experience.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's why it's important to spend time with the team that is going to acquire you from that big company beforehand, and build that chemistry. And if you really like working with them, then you can see that as your new home.
Yeah. So you guys have mentioned a little bit that you have a fund as well. And so kind of unique that you've run startups, you're currently running one, and did get funding, but then you also do investments as a fund. How do you kind of delineate and manage the two, and what advantages are there to being a startup entrepreneur and a VC?
I think when Mezi got acquired, because it was an AI powered platform, we got a lot of inbound from entrepreneurs asking us to probably look at their startup as an angel investor or advise them. So initially we started cutting individual checks, but then we soon realized that a lot of folks around us, like a lot of partners at bigger VC funds, they wanted to invest with us in that early stage. So that's how we converted that whole initiative into a fund, and we have invested in like 30 plus startups today. But more importantly, I think it adds a lot of value for those entrepreneurs in which we are investing in, because now they have access to real live entrepreneurs who have seen probably a few more years of an entrepreneur's life than them. So talking to us, we can actually, if we help them, guide them, they can avoid making mistakes. They can probably run faster. So I would say having operators on your cap table as investors is probably at some point even far more valuable than just having a VC.
Yeah. Anything to add there?
Yeah, I think I would say as a founder, you always need a friend to talk to, right? So though we might be investors in that company, we are upfront. We always tell them that you have to treat us as friends. So a lot of time in those founders actually talk to us about board issues and stuff like that, that they are not comfortable talking to their investors about. So that's the kind of bond that we want to build with the founders. And to a significant extent, we missed that bond significantly in our first startup, and then we had some key guys, angels, who invested in our second startup, and that is how we realized that, oh, this can actually help a lot. So we wanted to figure out a way to kind of slightly more democratize it, and through Twin VC Fund we can do that.
Yeah. And I assume through these interactions, like through friendship and, hey, I need advice, you also learn
Yeah,
stuff from them that you can apply to Zeni,
Yeah,
correct?
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
And living in both worlds, wearing both hats, if it's kind of just a dud and not a good pitch, but you recognize there is potential there, either with the technology, the product, or the team, do you guys have enough time to like say refine this and come back in 6 months to do what you do with Zeni, and then also kind of have these relationships and be funders? Do you have enough time to do both?
We don't actually go looking for founders to invest. Everything is inbound. So
Okay.
we will have probably bigger VC funds who ping us and say, oh, we might be too early for them. Look at them. We like them for XYZ reasons. So we normally only fund companies that are inbound. And a lot of them are now actually Zeni customers. So we come to know about them by being our customers first. And that is where from there we start building the bond.
Gotcha.
And we are very selective in investing. We typically do one deal a quarter. So,
Okay.
and the major reason for that is because we spend a lot of time on Zeni as well. So because we have limited amount of time to spend on twin ventures, we want to make sure that we select those startups very selectively.
Gotcha. And then it's kind of a virtuous circle. They become customers. You guys learn from them. And then you never know, you could get lucky and hit on a big one that they go huge, and you've got a huge payday as well, right? So
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, one
Uh,
of the startups we invested in just got valued close to $1 billion. So it's pretty amazing.
Wow. That's like having a bunch of favorite children.
Yeah.
Interesting. You guys got it all figured out on that one. It's admirable. And then you guys, you took some funding from Elevation, which is a fund
Mhm.
here in Utah and
Mhm.
in India. As like successful 2X founders, what was it like raising money the first time versus recently?
So we raised money without having a product or a PowerPoint when we started Zeni.
Yeah,
That was one big difference.
pretty
But
big
It's way
difference.
more
Yeah,
easier
way
with
more
every
easier.
startup, because even from the VC's perspective, their risk is reducing, right? So that's why VCs love investing in second-time founders, because even if you have failed as a first-time founder, you know what not to do so that you can't fail this time and you're hungrier. So VCs would love to invest in a second-time founder, and because we were third-time founders, it's the risk is even more reduced.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And
but I think at the end of the day, whether you're a founder or a VC, I think the key thing to keep in mind is you should only get an investment from someone you have a good frequency match with, right? I think that is more important than the brand who is funding you. I think the partner who is funding you is more important. Can you go maybe have dinner with that person and not talk about business? If you can do that, that means you have the right partner, right? Because when things go south, I think that is when the real colors come out, and that is when you have to kind of stick together as a team and get out of that zone.
yeah, that makes sense. So you guys are fairly, you guys are visionaries, right? Like you've been ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. This is kind of a Nimbus question, but how do you guys do that, right? Like, how do you kind of see around the corners and peer into the future a little bit more than what it seems like most people are able to do?
I think one of the best ways is to take the problems that you're facing pretty seriously. And if you have an entrepreneurial mind and if you see a problem that you're facing again and again, like with Zeni, we were facing the same problem for years. So when you have lived that problem, it I think increases your ability to see the future in a way where if you eliminate this problem, what can the world look like? And that insight and that pain of facing that problem can actually drive that excitement to go fix it in ways that others are not seeing it till now.
Yeah,
And I think for us, it is easy because we have a very strong tech background. But if there are founders who are not techies, I think for them, I would recommend that you should follow the nerd. Right? Where are the nerds going and why? Right? Because the innovation, what is going to happen in the next 10 years is already existing today, but it's sitting in some research papers. So for those founders, they should follow this path, and then they will probably able to figure out what is coming in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's why there are guys who are like 10 years ahead of us when it comes to the crypto ecosystem,
yeah,
and others are still confused what the hell is going on.
yeah,
Right? So
yeah. No, that's good advice. And follow the nerds is what you said. Your words, not
yeah.
mine. And so, do you guys anticipate, in 5 years from now, 10 years, whatever the number is, like you'll just keep doing this your entire life?
We had no reason to start Zeni actually, because we had a very successful exit. We could have started a big VC fund and just had a good life. But I think we really wanted to see if we can build a company that has 100 million in annual revenues. So that was the only reason why we started Zeni.
Very
And
cool.
yeah,
It's a challenge.
yeah,
Yeah. And the problem is global, right? So every startup in every country faces the same problem. So that's why we are building Zeni as a global platform from day one. And we think that there is a serious opportunity to build a massive company here. So I'm not sure whether we'll do it for the rest of the life, but probably at least for the next 10 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
At least get it to a level where I think Zeni will be successful if Zeni doesn't need us. I think that's our goal.
Very cool. And then you'll find another problem to tackle, it seems like.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
just
then-
invest.
Do more of these interviews.
Yeah, from the beach. I was looking at your LinkedIn profiles, and I'm joking here, but like they're almost exactly the same.
Yeah,
So,
we know each other since birth.
yeah. Is it when you're interviewing, like these companies when you're younger, was it a 2-for-1 deal, or
Oh, we were actually put in different classes by our teachers every single year, right? Since kindergarten, because they used to always be confused.
uh-huh.
But yeah, we were part of the same school. But the funny story is that when we decided to come for our masters at USC, we had amazing jobs in India, right? So I was telling Swapnil, dude, we have to go do our masters. So I kind of pulled him and we decided to do masters. Then he went and worked at Semantic. I was working at NCR. So he's like, dude, you have to come and work here because the culture is amazing. So he pulled me there. Then we wanted to start a consumer internet company. We wanted to work for one of the biggest brands. So I moved from LA to Bay Area to work at Yahoo. And I was like, oh, this company is awesome. So I found a group within Yahoo, which was complementary to my experience. And then I took his resume to the head there and told him, you need to hire my brother. And then he came to Bay Area. And then we left and started our first company.
Yeah.
So that's how kind of it took place.
Yeah, that's really fun. Did you guys ever use your identity and likeness in a nefarious way? Like, I don't want to go to this meeting, so you go. Or I don't want to go to class, you go.
At Yahoo, it happened with us a few times. Like my manager was walking by and he was like, hey, Snehal, you need to come. And it was actually Swapnil sitting there.
Yeah, she was like shocked. I was like just chilling out at the basketball court, and she was like, "We have a meeting in 5 minutes. What are you doing here?"
I guess the downside is if one of you did bad work, which doesn't seem likely, you could always just blame it on your brother as well.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
We try that a lot during our board meetings.
Keeps people on their toes, to say the least. All right, so you guys are here at Silicon Slopes because you've got expansion plans. What else is coming down the chute? What are you most excited about over the next year for Zeni?
I think growth. We are pretty excited about the growth that we are seeing. Pretty much our entire growth has been organic till now, and I think growth both in terms of our customers and our team. Like as we mentioned before, we started a new office here in Lehigh, so planning to grow that aggressively. We have a full sales team over here. We might consider building a marketing team over here as well. So we are opening 2 more offices in India. We already have a presence in Pune, so we are opening a big office in Mohali as well. And we are growing our offices in Palo Alto as well. So pretty excited about the growth in all aspects.
Yeah.
The fun fact is that our VC partner Elevation, they have been telling us since last year that you guys have to come to Utah. And there is amazing SaaS sales talent here. And we kept saying that, yeah, we have to do it. But we never pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
But finally this Feb, luckily our VP of sales, we found an amazing VP of sales. So that is how we decided, okay, let's give it a try. And now that we are here, we are like actually surprised how amazing this place is. So that's why we decided to double down from sales and also add marketing here. So that's our introduction to Utah.
Very cool. Well, you guys sound like you'll be busy for a while. And do you anticipate like a lot of time on the planes between here and India?
Yeah. Now that COVID is behind us.
Gotcha. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join. I know you guys are busy, and it's been great getting to know you and hearing about your story. It's a really interesting and fun one. So thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being here.
Thank you.